Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra, your course instructor for Essential Life Skills. I'm here again with a new session. In this session, you will learn about planning and delivery, a very important indicator of leadership skills. If a person is good at planning and delivery, you will think that the person has good leadership skills. Planning and delivery is very, very important because it will help us minimize waste of energy and waste of time. Otherwise, without planning, we can still do something, but there is every possibility that we'll be wasting a lot of time and energy because without proper plans, the actions that we perform may not be well directed. And when that happens, the actions will not lead to any potential or good results. And that's the reason why planning and delivery is very, very important, and all great leaders are good at planning and delivery. When it comes to important professional projects, planning will always help because it will allow us to plan, visualize, and prepare a strategic structure for the actions to be performed. So, there are occasions when we have to act immediately without any thoughts or plans, but on other occasions, we'll have to move ahead with a proper plan. So, both are important, and if we have to offer a comparison, planning is more important than acting immediately. So, we'll have to accept the fact that planning is very, very necessary because it allows us to do a certain thing in a very focused manner. It helps us overcome the challenges of wasting time and energy. And that's the reason why planning is so very important. So, let's take a look at the important aspects of planning. We'll start with a very interesting quote by the former American President Abraham Lincoln, the great American president. Lincoln once said that, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Now, that's a very powerful statement to make. So, if a person gets 6 hours to do a task, the person is going to spend 4 hours on planning and just 2 hours on action. So, planning and action are very closely related ideas, concepts. So, planning that leads to action is always a better way of approaching a task. Action without any planning is not always a better way of approaching a task. Abraham Lincoln's statement is a very powerful one because we can derive a very important message out of it. It tells us that planning is very, very important, and we have to spend a lot of time on planning before we can think of acting. So, action which is preceded by good planning will always have a greater chance of succeeding. And that's the reason why Lincoln is very right when he says that sharpening the axe is very, very important before we can think of cutting down the trees. There is a very interesting story over this particular idea of sharpening the axe. One day, a timber merchant called a woodcutter and asked him to cut down a few trees for him over a few days. And the timber merchant also offered a handsome amount to the woodcutter for that task. The woodcutter was very happy because that way he could earn a handsome payment. So the woodcutter started the task the very next day in excitement. On day 1, the woodcutter was able to fell down 10 trees. On day 2, the woodcutter could cut down only 7 trees. He was a little disturbed as he was unable to understand why it was so. Despite working for the same number of hours, he could cut down only 7 trees on day 2. On day 3, the woodcutter could cut down only 5 trees. So this actually compounded his worries. He was not in a position to understand why it is so that despite working for the same number of hours, his ability is gradually going down. His performance is going down. In a worried state, the woodcutter went to the timber merchant on day 4 and told him about it. The woodcutter told that probably he is losing his energy and his body is in trouble. The timber merchant listened to the woodcutter patiently and then asked him smilingly, "When was the last time you sharpened your axe?" "Sharpen? I have had no time to sharpen my axe. I have been so busy trying to cut the trees," the woodcutter replied. The timber merchant just smiled and he said that it's very important that you sharpen your axe before you start the action of cutting down the trees. The woodcutter promptly realized that he was at fault. The message that we can derive from this story is that planning is very, very important. So when we approach any task with a proper planning, there is every possibility that we will achieve a success. We can still approach a task without planning, but the rate and the possibility of success will always be very, very low. That's why planning is very, very important. So let's take a look at a few very important aspects of planning. Most leaders understand the importance of planning. Individuals at all levels in an organization tend to be more comfortable when there is a plan in place because it reminds them of their goal. So planning is very closely associated with goal making. Without a plan, we may not have a goal. We just can have a task, not the goal. A plan provides the course of action to take and help the team members get there in the most straightforward way. So planning is very, very important, and good leaders understand the value of planning. And that's the reason why planning should be done at every stage. There are 3 very important things that we need to check before we start to approach any task. These are 3 very important questions that we all need to ask ourselves before we approach a task, before we think of acting in a certain way. The first question is, where are we now? That means it will give us an idea of our current status. Similarly, the second question is, where do we want to go? It will give us an idea of what we intend to do or achieve. That means our future plans. And the third is, what steps will we take to get there? It will give us an idea of the things that we are supposed to do in order to be there. So from being at one place to go to another place can only be determined only when we know what we need to do in order to be there. So planning is very, very important. Failing to plan is planning to fail. We need to realize the importance of this statement very, very well so that we begin to plan for all our tasks. Because without planning, we are probably planning to fail. Take a look at this diagram. You'll understand how important it is for all of us to create a plan matrix, and through its different phases and components, we can focus on a task through a planned approach. So where we are now, where do we want to be and how do we get there? So starting with a SWOT analysis, then moving up and then going to the next stages, coming to the top with an action planning will mean that we are now ready to go for the action with a proper plan. So that's the importance of planning. Once we understand this, we'll find our tasks enjoyable, we'll find our tasks approachable. Next, we need to understand how important planning is. So there are a few indicators that tell us that planning is very, very important. Planning helps us set expectations very, very well. Once I have a plan, I'm in a position to communicate my plan to my team members. And all my team members will be comfortable because now they know what they have to do or what is expected of each of them. So when people know that they should be starting something, and when they know that they should be finishing something within a certain stipulated period, they will be in a better position to approach the task in a planned manner. So setting expectations is the first important component of planning. The next one is allocate resources. When we work in a team, it may happen that each of the team members has a certain set of skills and each team member is good at a certain thing. When leaders realize this, they will be in a better position to allocate the resources accordingly. So when I do not know the skills and abilities of my team members, I may end up giving the wrong task to a person or the team member, and that way the task will fail. So it's very, very important that we understand the abilities, the skills of our team members, and we allocate our resources accordingly. Third important thing is that planning will lead to increased accountability. Without a plan and deadlines, our work just continues until somebody gets around to completing it. But if we have leaders, or if we have the leadership skills with which we can understand the importance of planning and hold people to deadlines, suddenly people start to respect the work, the plan, and the task can be accomplished accordingly. The next importance of planning is that it leads to reduced uncertainties. So the first thing we look at while planning is to break any task or project down to its manageable components. For example, a team is working on the project of building a huge dam. The moment the team thinks of the huge dam, the entire thing, they will feel overwhelmed. So they have to break it down to manageable components. For example, in the first week or the first month we'll be doing this, the second month we'll be doing this, in the 24 months we'll be doing this and this and this. So if we can break down a huge task into manageable components, we can approach the task in stages. Instead of approaching the task as a whole and challenging one, we can always think of taking care of small, manageable components of the same task. I'm reminded of a wonderful saying by Mark Twain, one of America's finest writers. In fact, one of the finest writers ever. Twain once said that, eat a live frog first thing in the morning and nothing else will happen to you the rest of the day. So Twain probably talked about something bizarre and awkward, but that has a very strong message contained in it. The thing is that take care of the difficult task in the morning as the first thing that you have to do. The moment you take care of the difficult or the challenging task in the morning itself, the rest of the day you will be in a position to take care of the other manageable components. So it's always a good idea to approach the most challenging task first, and thereafter you can think of taking care of the other components as well. Taking a cue from Mark Twain's statement or the phrase "eat that frog," Brian Tracy, a self-help guru, has developed a wonderful concept of eat that frog. So it also means the same thing, that without delaying, without procrastinating, we need to approach our task in a very planned manner, in a manageable manner. So that is the power of planning. It helps us with so many things. So planning and delivery are very closely related concepts. One leads to the other. Delivery requires good planning, and planning leads to good delivery. And that is how it becomes a very important indicator of great leadership skills. That is how we come to the end of this session. I'm sure you have taken note of the important things that I talked about related to planning and delivery, and you're going to explore them further. When that happens, you'll feel more and more confident. I'll meet you again with a new session the next time. Bye-bye.